So that was Marcus Rashford's first goal since January.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, really amazing. First time Liverpool haven't won in their first 3 Premier League games since Brendan Rodgers back in 2012. So long distance, really. Erik Ten Hag was speaking to talkSPORT after the game and was asked if his team have now set the benchmark.
Yes, I can say yes, but it has to be a way of life. And it's not easy to get it, but it has, if players want to achieve, if teams want to achieve something special, then is that the way of life you have to act.
They have set the benchmark now, right?
Absolutely. And that was such a good performance, though. I was shocked, as Gary Neville was on commentary, because the way they started the game, the intensity, and I think Roy Keane said it before the game, you know, run, do a bit more work off the ball. Yep. And they certainly did that. And they just couldn't handle them. Look, we can organise the midfield area. The much more on top, wasn't they? Manchester United, Fernandes in there, Eriksen, McTominay had a decent game as well. Now they've got Casemiro, obviously, to come into that midfield. But I just thought the front three were electric as well. Sancho took his goal so well. Real composure, wasn't it? Not to panic, because you saw Milner come in, slide in, because
they were flying all over the place.
That's what you would do, though, because you're trying to block it. And even Alisson went to dive to the left-hand side, and that obviously, and Fernandes was just saying to him, look, in that corner there. And that's where Van Dijk should just close him down a little bit quicker. You got to run towards the ball and throw your body at it and try and block it. And he was far too slow to do that, and that's why they scored. But no, taking nothing away from Manchester United. They were brilliant last night. That's the sort of levels, and I'm sure every single Man United fan walking away from the stadium was buzzing, because that's the sort of levels you've got to play at. If you're going to be a top 4 team, top 6 team, that's the sort of levels you've got to play at week in, week out, which is difficult. But if you can do that, then I'm sure Manchester United will shoot up that league very quickly.
Stuart Pearce and Danny Murphy, they were in the gantry last night for talkSPORT. They were brilliant. Pearcey was still backing Klopp's men for more silverware this season.
We were at the Community Shield 3 weeks ago, and Liverpool put a performance on. 2 teams went toe-to-toe with each other, and I thought Liverpool were the better team. They had the more all-round performance. They would go from back to front quickly or play through the thirds. They had everything in their performance. And I said to you, they'll win the league this year. And I'll still stick by that. They'll get better, they'll improve. There's no doubt about that.
Danny's not so sure.
After 3 games, we're writing teams off. It's wrong. It's so wrong.
Well, this is what happened last season. We did write Liverpool off. They closed the gap. They didn't win the league, but they managed to close the gap. So we know it's in them, and we know that Manchester United dropped points. We saw it at the weekend. We saw it last season. I don't think the season is dead and buried by any stretch of the imagination.
You can't. The Premier League can't be over after 3 games. It's impossible.
No, it can't.
Something could go wrong very quickly at any club. So, you know, you can't write Liverpool off. You know, they're a machine. And look, they've had a bad start, but I'm sure Jurgen Klopp, that's what I wouldn't worry at all if I'm a Liverpool fan. I know the midfield, you could look at them last night and thought, well, that's not the Liverpool standard, but they've got so many injuries in that midfield area. You put Fabinho and Thiago back into that midfield, it's a totally different team. So that's what they'll be looking at, the fans. And, you know, as I said before, when you've got Jurgen Klopp as your manager, you've always got a chance, because he's such a cool character, isn't he? Even Sky before the game, where he just comes across, he's a fantastic guy, isn't he? To play under us, you'd imagine, and he'd get it right. I mean, I'm sure they'll look back at that game last night and say, look, was we at the races? Like we wasn't at the races last night. For a big game like that against United, you've got to be. And, you know, and now it's all about the next game for Liverpool. You've got to forget about Manchester United. Make sure you get 3 points at the weekend. Yeah.
OK, let's speak to someone in the know about this. Huge night last night at Old Trafford. We're joined now by former Red Devils keeper Mark Bosnich. Good morning, Mark. You all right?
Bozzy.
Good morning, Ray. Good morning, Laura. How are you?
Good morning. We're great. Thank you very much. What did you think of it? Wow.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic performance from Manchester United. That first half, I was just saying to somebody here this morning in Sydney, another Manchester United fan, I can't remember a 45 minutes of football that Manchester United had played for quite some time. You can't pinpoint it where it was so good. Second half, perhaps not as strong. That's understandable. And Liverpool, look, regardless of their poor start, are a champion side. So they're always going to come back at Manchester United. But they did what they had to do to win. And a wonderful fillip, especially after what's happened in the first 2 games. For them to come back and to perform like they did. Some great individual performances all over. But I think the most important thing to come out of everything, and what really impressed me, we all know that Erik Ten Hag has got a real clear identity of the way he wants to play. But I think he saw in those first 2 games that there are certain situations, especially in the Premier League, especially when you're playing against the least fancy teams who are going to make it very difficult for you from a physical point of view and an intensive point of view, that he's willing to adapt. And in terms of, we saw against Brentford how vulnerable they looked when they had their own goal kicks. I mean, last night it was perfect for me. If things went on, they pushed up and they started again. And I think that was the biggest thing to come out of last night, that you've got a manager there who's willing to adapt to the demands of the Premier League to do what he has to do to win.
Yeah, and the bold decisions as well were Bozzy, wasn't it? Changes in the team. I thought both fullbacks were excellent for Manchester United. I don't know about you. I thought that was excellent. He was brilliant on the right hand side. And Malacia, he was sensational. And Gary Neville was saying he was the only one at Brentford who showed that little bit of desire. And that's why he kept his position instead of Shaw.
Yeah, well, I think Malaysia. Anyone who'd watched the Conference League last season and saw Feyenoord, they had a fantastic run, and they got all the way to the final when unfortunately they lost to Roma. But he's an excellent acquisition. And look, some of the other players as well, who rightfully come under criticism in those first 2 games. Lisandro Martinez, I thought, had an excellent game, although it suited him far better playing against the Liverpool side, who tend to play a little bit of a different way than Brentford and Brighton did as well. But you look all throughout the team, everybody really chipped in. I thought the front 3 were fantastic, especially in the first half, although Elanga would be very disappointed he didn't score. And you mentioned Dalot as well. Dalot was absolutely fantastic in the pre-season. Varane, all of them really. Even the goalkeeper, David De Gea, made some really important saves. And that's what it's, I just heard what you just said, Ray, and you're exactly right. You know what it takes to win a championship. And it takes for everybody, and that doesn't include just the starting 11, but the squad as well, for people that come on or may have to start in future games, to really pitch in if they're going to achieve anything. And let's just hope, there's a massive 2 games coming up for them, Southampton away and I think Leicester away. There's just hope that they can continue that type of form in those 2 coming games, because if they drop back into those old habits and they happen to lose those 2 games, then people will just be saying, oh, well, look, they get themselves up for the big game, but they can't do it, week in, week out.
Bozzy, do you think for Ronaldo and Maguire there's a way back into the starting lineup anytime soon?
Well, for Cristiano Ronaldo, I think yes, at any stage. There's no doubt about that. I mean, regardless of what anyone says, last season he scored 24 goals. He did his job. There was a little bit of, obviously, shenanigans, if you want to call it that, at the start of the season, which could have been avoided always. But I think at any stage he can come back in the team. Harry Maguire, a little bit of a different story. I actually think right this moment in time, it's not a bad idea that he has a bit of a spell on the sideline. The confidence levels weren't great. But the biggest thing that we see with Harry Maguire, and I mentioned this last week, I think, on Sky Sports News, is that when he plays for England, he looks a completely different player. So there must be something not quite right there. But to have a bit of a spell on the sidelines is never a bad thing, especially when you're not playing so well. However, there's always that flip side of the coin, is that the team keep doing really well without him. He'll find it very difficult to get back in. But look, that's life at the big club. And that's why it's so important when you're at a big club that you have competition for places, but with 2 as equal players as possible, because the bottom line is the manager's name's on that club. And any top manager will tell you, look, he can be, try to be as accommodating as he wants. But the bottom line is, when push comes to shove, it's the manager that's going to get sacked. So he's going to make sure that he has the best 11. That's his responsibility to the fans, to everyone, the club, that he puts the best 11 possible out, and they try every week to make sure they get those 3 points.
All right, Bozzy, thanks for your time this morning,
Thanks,
mate.
Bozzy.
talkSPORT Breakfast with Laura Woods. Monday to Wednesday morning, 6 till 10. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.